talking today about tennis injuries, and there's a number of different types of injuries that can happen on a tennis court. We're going to deal with the ones that can happen up here in your upper body and your arm. We're also going to talk about lower body injuries. The overwhelming thing I want to say first about injuries is really try to determine the severity of your injury, whatever it may be. Simple number system is the best. If you're in pain, just ask yourself, 0 is no pain, 10 is the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. Where is this injury right now? So if I have tennis elbow, a very common tennis injury, which I don't, but right at this moment, if I had tennis elbow, I'd be saying, where's my tennis elbow? Okay, well it's 2 on 10. So because it's 2 on 10, that's not super serious. I probably should be paying attention to it, but at the same time, it's not making me hang my racket up. If I go to play and I'm feeling my arm, taking a couple of practice swings, and I've got 8 on 10 tennis elbow, which is pretty serious tennis elbow, I might rethink whether I should be playing tennis that day. And that's hard for people to do because they love the game so much. But if you play injured, seriously injured, you're simply exacerbating your injury. You're going to make it worse. You're going to make it longer. You might make it chronic. So you don't really want that. What you want is to rest. If you've got an 8 out of 10 tennis elbow, what you're doing is you're resting from tennis until it goes down to 2 or 3, and then you can get back on the court. So that's the overriding message I want to leave with everybody first, is take stock of your injuries individually and determine whether or not it's good to play tennis that day, or what frequency of tennis you're going to play that week. That's really important, especially if you're 50 plus. Injuries don't heal as fast when you're 50 plus, so it's more important to baby them. It's more important to take care of them. So let's just talk about a few different simple injuries that happen on a tennis court, tennis elbow being the prominent one. Tennis elbow that occurs on this part of the arm, the outside of the arm, this tendon gets really thin when it crosses the elbow, and it gets inflamed and it hurts, and mostly it gets thin from this kind of a rolling action. So the pain comes from me doing this action right here, and as I do that, this tendon doesn't really like that rotational aspect, and so over the course of many repetitions we get a tennis elbow experience in there, usually from a forehand or oftentimes from a backhand. And here you see me demonstrating the kind of rotational move that will often create tennis elbow. If I'm limiting my rotation and hitting a backhand like I'm showing you right now, then there's not as much strain on the arm. But if I'm rotating the forearm every time, this rotation back and forth is exactly what causes outside tennis elbow. And that's a very, very common tennis injury. The other thing that can create tennis elbow injury-wise is strings that are too tight. So you want to look at the possibility of reducing your string tension if you do have tennis elbow. The grip size plays a huge role in tennis elbow. If your grip is too small, then you're going to be white knuckling the handle, really holding on super tight. And because you're holding on super tight, there's a lot of tension in here. The tension doesn't go away, it stays because you're holding on so tight. And that just adds stress and eventual fatigue to that area, which causes the inflammation. So, the ability to play with a grip where you can hold on to the handle fairly loosely and stop the head of the racket from twisting. In one of my videos last year, I talked about large grip or small grip, and I go into that much more extensively about the impact of the grip size on the torquing aspect. So I won't repeat myself here. But if you do have tennis elbow, it's certainly one of the things you want to look at. Reducing grip size and reducing string tension. The other place that people get tennis elbow is inside. Now inside will happen every once in a while from the forehand, but most inside tennis elbow is serving related. Some relationship to the racket with your arm which is not functional. And generally speaking, if I had to pick a generalization, it would be that the ball is usually too far back and there's a little bit more strain on the arm at impact than you want. So when the racket's in front of your body, like this, then there's less strain at the point of impact. It's a little bit easier to create that. You'll also get sometimes some inside elbow stuff from a state of hyperextension, where people are stretching too high to reach the ball. Far and away, one of the biggest causes of shoulder or rotator cuff injury is stretching. So when I tell people to reach up comfortably for a serve, I want them at maximum extension. But what happens very often is they overdo it and they go way, way up, and now they're trying to swing at a tennis ball and they're stretching that joint like just like apart while they're going that way with serious force. So you're going this way into the ball with serious force and the joint is stretching apart, and that's just instant rotator cuff stuff. And you get people coming back with rotator cuff injury from that. Over serving is a really easy way to get a rotator cuff injury. So if you're practicing your new serve, please limit yourself to 75 serves a day, because if you're serving 400 balls a day, you're going to do some damage. Like, it's just not, that's just not how tennis looks. A tennis match would not have that ball after ball after ball after ball. So 75 balls a day will get it done, and you'll reduce injury here. So where are we? Rotator cuff we got, tennis elbow. Lately, because of this is more in the era now of modern tennis and the modern rackets, we have a lot more wrist tendonitis showing up. And wrist tendonitis happens when people are trying to bring the racket into the ball in a dysfunctional way. However, they learned it on their own from a coach. When they're using their wrist, like I'm doing right now, to strike the tennis ball with a wrist release at the point of impact like this will create wrist tendonitis in short order. So what we really want is we want to feel like a pretty firm wristed impact. Even if we're trying to create a hard topspin forehand, any wrist action that we get is going to be well past impact. It's going to be up around here somewhere. We don't really want to feel like we've got wrist involvement right at the point of impact. But if you do have a lot of wrist involvement in this direction, or a lot of wrist involvement in this direction while you're hitting a ground stroke, or a lot of wrist involvement in this direction on the backhand. If you're doing that, you will create some tension in here, and ultimately your wrist will tell you what's going on. And that just means that something dysfunctional is occurring in the way you're choosing to swing at the tennis ball. So three main areas in the arm are the primary spots that show up for tennis players. Obviously when it comes to other parts of your body, knees are really tough on a tennis court, and I encourage you, if you have any kind of knee injury, to not let yourself play points. Don't do anything on a tennis court with any kind of leg injury where you're going to have to move suddenly for a tennis ball. If you have a leg injury and you must play tennis, limit yourself to hitting on the wall or hitting with a partner in a controlled rally situation where the ball is coming at you and you don't have to move as much. Because again, if you've already got an existing knee injury, let's say it's 7 on 10 on the scale we just talked about, and you go out to play a little friendly set of tennis. Well, now you're going to move to a ball at deuce, and you're going to immediately run the possibility of turning that into a 9 or turning it into an injury where you have to take 6 months off of tennis. So it's really not worth it. What you want to do is, hit tennis balls, work on your strokes. When the injury in your knee, let's say, goes down to a 2 or a 3, at that point, say, okay, well now I can probably move around a little bit. I can play some tennis, some actual points. But do be your own best coach in this area, because I coach a lot of 50-plus players these days, and sometimes they really try to push the envelope. They will really try to play through injuries in some kind of, sort of stoic fashion, and it's really not a good call. So for the good of the game, for your own future in the sport, I just isolated a few injuries there, talking about them, and let you realize what you want to do when and if that shows up for you. Okay, and if you can play injury-free for as long as possible, that's the best possible world. So enjoy your tennis.